All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the third presentation in the Peerless Food Equipment Ask the Expert webinar series. My name is Sherry Swab, and I will be the moderator for this series. The topic of the webinar today is the advantages of preventative maintenance schedules and agreements in industrial equipment. Before I introduce our presenters, I'd like to provide a brief overview about Peerless. Peerless Food Equipment is a food equipment company dedicated to creating value for the world's leading bakeries and food processors by developing and applying innovative technology for excellent solutions. Customers worldwide trust Peerless to create high-quality, reliable equipment, meet critical sanitation requirements, and provide attentive after-sales service to optimize their processes and reduce their downtime. The bread and roll, biscuit and cracker, and cake and snack market segments use Peerless equipment. I'd also like to introduce our speakers for today's webinar, Mr. Patrick Smith and Mr. Gus Milliker. Mr. Patrick Smith joined Peerless in 1989 and has served several positions during his 24 years of employment. A machinist by trade, Patrick has also worked in the electrical and assembly departments prior to becoming an international service technician in 2002. His specialties include hydraulic and mechanical dividers and mixers. Mr. Gus Milliker has been with Peerless for 37 years, and his area of expertise is the Peters line. Gus has a machinist background, having completed a 4-year apprenticeship and related theory training before joining the company. Before doing field service full-time, Gus also assembled the equipment and made parts from the frame up to the stencil. Please welcome Mr. Patrick Smith.
Hello, my name is Patrick Smith, a service technician with Peerless. I've been at Peerless for 24 years, traveling around the world to your bakeries for the last 12. Today I'm going to be discussing the importance of maintaining preventative maintenance schedules, and more importantly, the reasons why we think Peerless should be involved with your team concerning these. The first question I'd ask each of you is, when was your mixer last given a complete service? I'm not talking about when you send a guy out to put grease in the machine or when you change your shaft seals. I'm talking about having a qualified, knowledgeable, dedicated mechanic going through every aspect of your machine to determine what's required to allow this machine to run trouble-free as expected. This would include all the following checks and services: daily, weekly, monthly, semi-annual, and annual. I would also ask if these were done correctly and with the confidence that all critical components were inspected. If the answer is not real clear or up for debate, then Peerless can work with you to give you the ability to have confidence in the fact that the proper services and inspections are being done correctly and on time. Peerless has been building bakery equipment for the past 100 years, and we like to work closely with our customers to maintain the quality and safety standards of our equipment. We are aware of the close-knit family that exists within the baking industry and know how important it is to be actively involved and invested with the performance of your equipment and your processes. A lot of people incorrectly assume that having a Peerless technician on site for PMs means that our technicians will be replacing your maintenance personnel and doing the services that are not being done. This is not the purpose of the program. We know we cannot replace your day-to-day maintenance or your mechanics. What we can do while on site is assist your mechanics with the required services and train your personnel as the services are being performed. This will give them the best opportunity to perform all future PMs correctly and with confidence. Our equipment has changed over the past 100 years. If you're still running the mixer to the left here, congratulations, you have a great maintenance program, but you need to catch up a bit. The design and technology of our equipment has increased considerably over the last 15 years, and the safety standards are constantly being updated. Drive belts have become the new standard over chains, and if you don't have a frequency drive on your mixer, it's becoming outdated quicker than you realize. With these changes, your maintenance practices will need to be adjusted. Having a Peerless expert on site allows customers to understand and update these practices. It also creates an opportunity to reinforce the training that was originally provided with your equipment. Our on-site experts can also use their experience and knowledge to predict and possibly prevent future major mechanical breakdowns, which give you the ability to be more proactive with maintenance schedules. That goes a long way when today's production schedules allow little room for maintenance required to prevent costly downtimes. We will also work with your team to ensure that all safety devices are working as originally designed. Preventative versus predictive maintenance. Is your current maintenance program reactive or proactive? Most maintenance programs in the baking industry are designed to be more proactive, but with today's production demands, a lot of the scheduled maintenance gets pushed back and sometimes forgotten. This trend will compound over time, and the maintenance team will find that they are being more reactive than proactive. The fact that most maintenance teams seem to be understaffed only adds to this issue. Can a Peerless PM program help you reduce costly downtimes? The answer is yes. Our experts can determine the current status of your Peerless equipment. We know where to look for the wear points and the problems that are common. We understand the differences in the models and the years manufactured. After all, we built the equipment. We also look at the history of your machine. We know what upgrades have been added, what parts have been ordered, and what services have been done in the last years. In some cases, the services or parts not ordered give us clues where to look for issues. Along with the PM contract, there's a lot of benefits that you might not realize. These include reduced rates on parts and discounted services. Plus, you receive priority if emergency services are requested. Preventative maintenance is generally carried out to prolong the useful working life of machines and is generally based on past experience or manufacturer's recommendation. Wear and tear are two occurrences that nobody can avoid. However well carried out preventative maintenance, your equipment is going to fail someday, but before that, ample warning signs are usually given. These signs are in the form of noise, vibration, or temperature. This is where predictive maintenance comes in. Basing again on past experience or techniques such as analysis of oil or measurement of wear and so on, mechanics and engineers are able to schedule a shutdown and do repairs before a breakdown that affects your production schedule. Depending on the techniques used, we are often able to predict quite accurately the problem parts and have standby replacements so as to minimize downtime. We can almost guess what kind of services will be required on a mixer from the 90s. Even if preventative maintenance is being done, there is still wear occurring. Predictive maintenance is a part of preventive maintenance. Actually, a technique used in preventative maintenance. All are done to prevent unforeseen shutdowns and maximize the working life of machines. Bearings, trunnion rings, bowls, shafts, agitators, belts, chains, motors, reducers, and sprockets are all major parts that will eventually fail. These require detailed inspections, typically not done on regular PMs. Once a potential issue is discovered, we report them. Convincing a customer to replace worn parts before they fail can be difficult until they consider the downtime cost and the production disruptions on a service that they're going to end up doing anyways. Your mechanic may be adding grease every week as required, but may fail to understand where the grease is actually going. A lot of our mixers have central lubrication points located outside the mixer that allows for lubrication without opening the end doors. This is convenient but not always good. A good way to maintain equipment. I mean, if your mechanic's not opening up the end doors and looking at the tilt mechanisms and the drive components, surprises are going to happen. None of them good. Another example is automatic lubrication systems. Going in and filling the automatic reservoir is required, but we want your mechanics to inspect the grease lines and look for failures in the lubrication system while they're inside. When was your motor to reducer coupling last inspected? If it's been Longer than a month, you're behind schedule and trending towards reactive maintenance. A good inspection will require the equipment to be viewed under load. While it's true we cannot interrupt production once a problem is identified, running production tells us a lot about your machine that are hidden when operating empty. Examples are bowl tilting and agitator shaft movement, unusual noises and temperature variations. Some customers will call up and schedule inspections for down days, which is fine and allows us to review their equipment in detail. But a good inspection will require the machine to be visualized under production. If I'm doing my job correctly, I want to see it under load if possible. Once an inspection is completed, our technicians file a detailed report listing work completed, any notes they felt were important, parts required, and action items that need to be completed. Half the battle is knowing what needs to be done. Costly maintenance failures that may be difficult to predict. Bearing heads and trunnion rings. A dry bearing head is a visual indication of a serious lubrication issue. It may be as simple as a sanitation washdown issue or a bigger issue involving failed lubrication system or clogged or broken grease lines. Hydraulic power units are mostly ignored by maintenance as long as they work. They are a contained system that runs behind the scenes. Oil level and filter must be maintained on these. Gear reducers seldom fail without some indication or signs. Having a Peerless technician available to determine what sounds normal can help predict issues. Once a reducer goes out, the first question everyone's going to ask is, when was the oil last changed? You need to be able to say with confidence it's been less than 6 months ago, and you can do that if your PMs are current. Bearings can be seen failing sometimes months before they actually cause a production stoppage. Doing a bearing change on a scheduled downtime shows that your maintenance team is being proactive and reduces costly production loss. Cracks and bowls are often found by our technicians during inspections and reported to maintenance. These are early indications of structural damage that can result in jacket leaks. Shaft and roller bar failures can be hard to predict, but most failures can be attributed to loose agitator keys, pins, bushings, bolts, and shaft seal maintenance. All these items are inspected during regular preventative maintenance, but can easily be overlooked by inexperienced mechanics. And the last one is gear case failures. Backlash between double arm agitators is a major indication of gear wear. The average lead time for a gear case rebuild for the parts exceeds 2 months. So if you're proactive, you can get those parts on order and get it repaired before the machine goes down. You know, parts can be expedited, but this is expensive and unnecessary. Preventative maintenance is required to accurately predict and prevent costly maintenance failures. Here are some examples. Trunnion rings. Last year, we replaced over 10 sets of mixer trunnion rings. This is a costly service that requires the bowl to be removed from the mixer and the frame rebuilt. All of these could have been prevented with our Peerless PM plan. Refilling lost hydraulic fluid is required at times, but the key is identifying and repairing a leak, and that will in turn prevent damages. Gear case backlash, we talked about that. You can monitor that and record the backlash and then schedule the rebuild. On dividers, I see customers wasting a lot of product due to worn parts. These parts should be replaced for that reason alone. Once a worn part breaks, there's usually more damage, and all that could have been prevented. While participating in a Peerless PM contract cannot eliminate all failures, it can be a valid tool to help predict major failures before they occur. Preventing one major failure can easily pay for a complete year of PM services. During a recent visit to a customer, we discovered they were forcing water into the bearing cavities during washdowns. This is a common issue with today's power washers that was easily corrected with training. Had this condition been allowed to continue, it would have resulted in costly downtime and emergency bearing repairs. We can determine if shaft seals are being properly lubricated and sanitized. A damaged shaft will not seal, and replacing one is costly. Parts, labor, and downtime must be considered. In addition to having a Peerless expert on site to help review your equipment, consider these added advantages. Our customers with PM contracts receive priority when it comes to emergency services. I can think of several instances where we are able to mobilize services within hours when requested by one of our PM contracted customers. Discount service and parts. Customers also receive a 20% discount on required services identified during our PM process. 20% on a big service like a bearing change or a bowl replacement is substantial. Our PM contract customers receive 5% discounts on parts generated from our PM visits. This works hand in hand with predictive maintenance and scheduling proactive maintenance. Continuous training. Some of our customers experience large turnovers in their maintenance teams. With these experienced personnel leaving, a lot of reinforcement training is required. Having the expert work directly with them is a great way to teach them what to look for. Updates on new options offered by Peerless. Peerless technicians travel all over the world and are familiar with what is currently trending in the baking industry. They can often advise customers on options they may not even be aware exist. Shaft seals, flour gates, cooling options, dough handling options, all have been updated in the last few years. Prior to a PM visit, our customers are contacted and advised to stock parts required during our PM visit. This helps ensure the parts are installed while we're on site versus getting a list of parts that need to be added later. We can often identify what parts are not being stocked and can advise if stocked items are valid. A customer's update equipment, but they seldom reduce obsolete inventory. Safety review. Peerless technicians will advise customers if Peerless equipment is operated in an unsafe condition. This will reduce accidents and costly liability. In the heat of battle to get equipment running, sometimes safety switches are bypassed and not returned to the safety circuit. We understand how the original safeties were meant to operate and will correct or report any issues with them. Included in the Preventative Maintenance Program, Peerless Food Equipment will provide the following services. A typical PM visit with the customer will include the following. We'll conduct an informal opening meeting to discuss a plan for service. We'll provide the correct person that's familiar with the equipment. Sometimes schedules get moved at the last minute, and that could be our fault or your fault, but we'll work with you always to get it done on time. Reviewing preventative maintenance work will give the technician a start point and an idea where best to concentrate his efforts while on site. Compile a list of issues to be investigated during PM, based on PM work. What they'll do is they'll list issues and focus the technician's efforts towards the problem areas. This is a big part of the PM. You supplying we're going to work with your bakery personnel to complete the scheduled PM. This is a big part of the PM. You supplying the correct personnel will ensure the best results. And we'll review issues and create priorities with the maintenance manager for work to be completed. Prioritizing the work orders on needed repairs will continue the efforts once we have left. Review parts inventory with maintenance manager. Inventory of parts will keep the wear parts on the shelf. Provide training and machine operating review with personnel from all three shifts during all three shifts. Continuous training will help replace knowledge lost from turnovers. We'll concentrate on completion of the scheduled PM. What we mean by that is sometimes during a PM, we see work that has to be done, and we can get bogged down in that work and not complete the PM. So sometimes we have to pick and choose whether to just write up a work order or to dive in and complete the repair. So sometimes we have to balance the two. If we can't complete the work, we'll write them down, note them, and recommend them for work orders. We'll conduct a closeout meeting and review the results of the PM, and we'll note all major findings. After we return home, we'll send a detailed trip report and issue this to the maintenance manager within a week. We'll follow up with the maintenance manager. The technician will follow up with a phone call or an email to check for any other issues. And remember, all parts ordered as a result of the PM visit are reduced by 5% and a 20% discount on all Peerless food equipment standard hourly rates. Now I want to talk about some areas of the mixers to look for problems. 3 common areas where problems are found are going to be your bowls, your trunnion rings and bearing heads, and your agitators. And we're going to go through each one of them in detail, starting with the bowls. Bowls. You want to look for structure damage on your bowls. Most high-speed bread mixing bowls that are in the 10 to 20 year age range are going to have evidence of structure damage. Sweet dough mixers tend to hold up a lot better because of what you mix and the lower speeds that they mix at. Okay, but on all bowls, you want to check all corners and weld seams for cracks. You want to check around the bowl lips for cracks. Check the bowl spacers and support tubes at the welds. Check the welds around the cold bars, and check your jacket wrapper sheets for cracks. Here we got a couple photos that show some major structure damage on some bowls. Here's the side, if I can point to it, here's the side of a bowl that's showing a major fracture in it. Sometimes you would think they'd be easy to see, and sometimes we point them out to the customers and they're shocked that they exist. This one's on the outside base plate, and you can see that this crack goes all the way through. And this was at a recent inspection on a customer. And when that mixer was under production, I could feel that crack opening and closing. So they really had worked their bowl over good. They're going to need some major repairs on that bowl, if not a bowl replacement. Trunnion rings and bearing heads. Here's a bearing head we pulled out of a mixer that was neglected. You can see where the bowl's tilted up and down so many times it's worn a groove in it right up to the mounting bolts. This wasn't necessary. If a lubrication system fails, it needs to be addressed right away. If it's allowed, if your lubrication system's not corrected, this is the kind of wear you're going to receive if you continue to run your mixer. Because they failed to recognize this, it involved replacing the trunnion rings, which is basically removing the bowl and rebuilding the framework. Agitators and worn agitators. Worn bushings, broken pins, and loose bolts are common in agitators. You want to go in there and inspect torque your bolts every month and replace your bolts every year. In this example here, this bolt has been stretched so much because somebody was improperly torquing it. It's a wonder this bolt didn't come out into the product and cause a serious production or product loss. Please consider the benefits of a Peerless PM contract. Our service department will be glad to quote a custom PM plan designed for your existing and future equipment. Thank you for your time. And now I'd like to introduce Gus Milliker.
Hello, I'll be speaking on preventive and predictive maintenance on the Peters equipment. Preventive maintenance is key to reducing or eliminating production downtime. Predictive maintenance is understanding what key items to have in stock in order to avoid lengthy production downtime. Mechanical. 1. Wear items. anything from seals to chains. A. Stencil O-rings. B. Stencil helical seals. C. Driver and idler hub oil seals. D. Bronze oilite bushings for driver and idler hubs. E. Bronze oilite thrust washers. F. Shut-off valve O-rings. G. Cream cutoff wires. H. Product carrier chains. 2. On-hand items. These are items that should be kept in stock to avoid downtime. These are A. O-rings for stencil and shut-off valve. B. Stencil helical seals. C. Driver and idler hub oil seals. D. Bronze oilite bushings for driver and idler hubs. E. Bronze oilite thrust washers. F. Shut-off valve O-rings. C. G. Cream cutoff wires. And H. One set of product carrier chains. 3. Useful spares are A. A spare stencil. This can be swapped out for one with damaged seals and then resuming production. Then the one with the damaged seals can be repaired with new ones while production continues. B. A spare stencil assembly is good to have on hand when changing to a different size, flavor, or if the one running in the machine becomes damaged. C. A spare cream hopper is good to have on hand when changing flavors or the one in line breaks down. Electrical. It is a good idea to keep spares of anything that can wear out or become water damaged, from smaller items such as fuses, safety switches, cake and reject sensors, jog cords, etc., to larger items such as drives. Stencil wear items. 1. O-ring. Item 1. This should be inspected every time the stencil assembly is washed. The O-ring should be discarded and replaced with a new one at the slightest sign of wear to ensure proper cream balance between the lanes. 2. Stencil helical seals. Items 2 and 3. These should be inspected every time the assembly is washed. If the seal starts leaking during production, they should be replaced as soon as possible to avoid wastage and to assure that deposits have the correct weight. Peter's sandwich cleaner. Every cleaning cycle. 1. Disassemble and inspect the stencil assembly for any cracks, worn out seals, wear on the center O-ring. The bronze bushings on the driver and idler hubs should be measured for wear. 1A. Worn helical seals should be replaced as soon as possible because cream will leak out of the stencil ends and into the driver and idler hubs. B. Replace center O-ring at first sign of wear to ensure proper cream balance between lanes. C. Check the oil seals in the driver and idler hubs for wear. D. Measure the bronze bushings in the driver hub every 90 days to make sure the ID is not out of tolerance. Since the stencil assembly is suspended from these, it is important to replace them when they are out of tolerance to prevent premature seal wear and damage. 2. After washing and drying the stencil assembly, oil the stencil tube, the bronze bushings and seals, and reassemble. Put oil in the threaded oil ports in the stencil hubs. 3. Check cutoff wires for wear and proper tension. 4. Check carrier chain tension and adjust auto tension sprockets if necessary. 5. Check chain for loose or bent carrier pins. Straighten and tighten if necessary. Also check for wear and pin phasing. If the pins on the chains in one lane are too far out of line, they should be replaced. 6. Oil carrier chain manually with spray bottle. 7. Fill auto chain lube reservoir with food grade oil. 8. Carrier chains stencil assembly parts should be lubricated with food grade oil only. 9. Check shutoff valve for worn O-rings. And knife valves should be checked with a straight edge to make sure they are not bent, so that there is no leakage when they are in the off position. 10. Check the tension in the product carrier wires and tighten when necessary. Monthly. Check sprockets for wear. 2. Check stencil play. Example, if the stencil can be rotated a quarter-inch forward and backward, all drive chains need to be tightened or replaced, including the ones in the stencil drive. With too much play, the deposit will drift forwards and backwards if this is not corrected. Every 3 months. 1. Air filters and regulators. Inspect for dirt, clogging, and leaks. 2. Inspect air cylinders for wear and leaks. 3. Grease bearings. Gearboxes. The gearbox manufacturer's recommendation should be followed. QS2 stacker. Every cleaning cycle, check overhead pin chains for slack and tighten if required. 2. Check overhead pin chains for bent pins and straighten if needed. 3. Check the drive chains under the top cover for slack and tighten if needed. 4. Check spring plungers in driver hub for wear and replace as needed. 5. Check the drive chains between the PT and QS stacker for slack and tighten as needed. QS2 Bottom Pin Chain. Every cleaning cycle. 1. Check lower pin chain for slack and tighten if necessary. 2. Inspect the pins for straightness. 3. Check the timing between the lower pin and the upper pin. They must be in line with each other at the point where the top cookie rail is over the bottom cookie rail. The upper pusher pin should never be in front of the lower pin, or it will crush the cookie. It can be behind, by example, as much as 9 millimeters. So when the lower pin releases the cookie, it will fall back on the top pin. 4. Oil all chains and food grade oil on pin chains. 5. Inspect all chains for wear. Peter's cream hopper. At every cleaning cycle, inspect bottom of tank for leaks. 2. Inspect center cap seals that cover the agitator shaft. 3. Replace O-ring and seals if leaks are detected. Waukesha pump. 1. The pump must be disassembled and washed. 2. All seals and O-rings inspected and replaced if worn. 3. Refer to the Waukesha pump operation, maintenance, and parts list for removal of fluid head for cleaning. Auger assembly. Every cleaning cycle, pull the auger assembly from the hopper. Remove the 4 bolts that keep the auger in place and pull the auger straight out, keeping it as level and on center as possible. After cleaning, inspect the auger helix, silicone auger seal, and O-ring for any damage. Replace worn components as needed or when leaking. Peter's cream aeration system. Every cleaning cycle. 1. Follow the same cleaning and maintenance procedure as for the hopper. 2. Remove the front cover of aeration head and remove the rotor. 3. After all parts have been washed, inspect all seals for wear. Inspect 4. Inspect back pressure valve for wear. 5. Inspect all fittings, air lines, valves, and regulators for leaks. Peter's tray loader. Every cleaning cycle, inspect overhead transfer conveyor chains for slack and then tension is needed. 2. Inspect overhead transfer conveyor for missing, bent, or out of position pusher pins and repair as needed. 3. Inspect side guide rails for correct position. 4. Inspect counting conveyor flights and rollers for any damage. 5. Inspect all drive chains for slack and tension as needed. After tightening chains, jog the machine slowly to make sure the counting conveyor flight rollers enter and exit the switch gate without pinching the rollers. Peter's Platen row multiplier. Every cleaning cycle, 1. Inspect Platens for damage and missing pusher pins. 2. Inspect Platen carrier rods for any damage, such as nicks and bent rods. Bent rods should be replaced for better performance and so the Platens are not damaged. 3. Inspect overhead transfer for damaged pins. 4. Inspect all chains for slack and tighten as needed. 5. Check the timing of the overhead transfer from the PT to the Platens. 6. Jog the machine slowly, making sure the Platen pins do not hit the side guide rails or the slots in the stacking plate at the exit end of the row multiplier. 7. Oil the chains that drive the Platen rods with food grade oil. 8. Oil the Platen carrier rods with food grade oil. 9. All other chains that are covered by guarding and are not near the product do not need to be oiled with food grade oil. And monthly, check sprockets for wear. Every 3 months, inspect and grease all bearings. Split deposit stencil. The deposit stencil should be cleaned in the same way as a regular stencil. Every time it is washed, the helical seal should be inspected for wear. This stencil has 2 extra O-rings that separate the deposits. They should be inspected and replaced if worn.
Okay, thanks very much, Gus and Pat. I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines now.
The conference is now in talk mode.
Okay, thank you, Gus and Pat. I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines for any direct questions that we might have out there about preventive maintenance service agreements or just about preventative maintenance in general on mixers or specifically on our Peters equipment. I don't see that we've got any in our Q&A box right now. But I'm going to go ahead and I just like to thank everybody for joining us today at Peerless for our Ask the Expert webinar series. Please plan to join us on Thursday, July the 11th in 2013 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for a review of what's new in sandwiching equipment with our Senior Product Engineer, Mr. Ankush Mittal.